All
Think we're
right.
live.
Looks like we're live. Hey, Brandy. Hey, Lorenzo.
Hey,
Nice to
Ed.
see you both. Might be muted.
There we
There we
go. Hello.
go. Thanks for joining us here at Progress Texas, the happy hour we do on Fridays. And one of the things we've been doing this summer is talking to candidates who are running for office, especially those in competitive districts. And you two in particular have two of the most competitive districts in Texas. Brandy,
Yay!
Brandy, you came really close last time. Lorenzo, I know that you're new to the ballot this year, but the race was really close last time. And I think Beto won both districts, right?
Yes.
Yes, he
And
did.
you're both in North Texas. So what I'd like to do is let me start with Brandy. Tell us a little bit about your district. I know that you're up in Dallas, and I'm also curious of the difference between last year, the campaign from 2 years ago, and the campaign from this year. Anything changed? Just anything at all?
There's been a couple changes. Just a couple. Yeah. So my district is the northeast borders of Dallas County. So that's North Garland, East Richardson, Saxe, and the very, very tip of Rowlett. But it's all within the Dallas County. And in 2018, as you said, I ran as a first-time candidate against a 5-term Republican incumbent and earned 49% of the vote in a race that everyone thought, and I mean everyone thought, that I would lose by 14 points. So no one thought that I could win last year, so I didn't get much support. I didn't get much investment. And I had to show them that we could do it. And so I did. You know, everyone saw out of 53,000 votes cast that I just missed the mark by 1,100 votes instead of 3% of the votes, which they thought that we'd get. And so this year, people believe we could win. People believe it. So we're really excited about it. And because Beto did win my district by 9.5 points. So they're not accepting that this is a red district anymore, and that, with a little bit of, spit and shine, we're going to get there.
And now yours is a Dallas district, and I know you mentioned this at the top. Is it the western portion of Dallas?
Eastern. It's like, so my eastern border is the east border of the county, and my northern border is the northern border of the county. So I'm the last little puzzle piece that fits into that. And then I think I share a border with Lorenzo.
And that's
so
actually
where Collin County.
Your northern border probably touches or comes close to his district, right, Lorenzo?
Yeah, Brandy's right on the other side of the district line from me there. And my district is the southern portion of Collin County. It has a piece of Dallas, the city of Dallas within Collin County, but it's mostly Richardson and Collin County, the middle portion of Plano, and then western portions of Allen going into the east. So it's just a little bit of everything, and we're right along the border. There's a lot of excitement going on here, knowing that there's so much momentum. It is a district that Beto O'Rourke won in 2018. So we know that we have the Democrats in the district. We just need to make sure that they turn out, that they know about the candidates, and that they vote all the way down the ballot this year.
And an interesting thing, Lorenzo, about your district is that Collin County for years had been seen as this bastion of conservative activity, and that has rapidly changed, not just in the past 2 years, but going back to the last 4 to 6 years, right?
Yes. So I was raised here. I remember going out to vote and it being very difficult to find a Democrat anywhere on my ballot. And it has changed so rapidly. And I think that's twofold. We obviously have a population growth here where there's a lot of families moving in. A lot of them tend to be college educated. A lot of them tend to be new families. So they're coming here in expectations of hoping to find a good job, hoping that they can put their kids in an excellent public school. And I think that's where the change really starting to happen, where people are a little disenfranchised with the current political system and their current representatives not really holding the same values as the community members and our neighbors.
Yeah.
So that's probably why the biggest difference between, shift between Republican and Democrat that we're seeing here right now.
I want to come back to both of your districts, but what I like to do is kind of start with a primer on what the districts look like so people get a good idea of where you're running and some of the voters that you're communicating with. But I want to pull back a little bit and go a little broader just in terms of life right now. There's a lot of changes in the world, and because of that, there's a lot of changes in our lives. So on a personal level, what is keeping you grounded these days and all this craziness of a campaign and also the coronavirus and everything else? What is it that kind of helps you sleep better at night, maybe helps you find your balance?
For me, I have an 11-year-old daughter who is virtually and over there commenting as we go, virtually learning. And we are, still practicing shelter in place for the most part. And we don't go very many places. And so we've got a lot of forced family bonding is what my family calls it. And believe me, that will keep you grounded. That will keep you grounded on anything and everything. And the pandemic has had catastrophic effects on people in different ways. But the highlight for me from this situation is that I am forced to spend more time with my family, and I love it. It's because being an attorney, I'm still working full time, being a candidate. If this was normal season, I would never be home. I would never be home. I'd be out all the time, going to different events, going and talking to voters, going and doing this, and I would never get to see my daughter. And the highlight is that with the magic of Zoom, I can still do all those things, but still be here with her and get to have that quality time.
Nice. How about yourself, Lorenzo?
For me, it's, this is where I was raised. So I have my family here. Mm-hmm. I think, even when I have really, really hard days, and what I mean by hard is just long days where I start at 7 and usually end up falling asleep with my phone in my hand, responding to people. It's my volunteers and my family. They're really the reasons why I'm doing this. I want to be of service to my community. So it's actually helping me kind of stay focused on that. I know when I was a volunteer in the past for other campaigns, I would just, be door knocking furiously if something bad was going on in the news. But now it's, in a way, I'm constantly doing something to hopefully affect change here in Collin County.
One of the things about this quarantine and the coronavirus is that because we're social distancing and a lot of people are working from home, we're not around a lot of people. But as both of you are attesting to, our relationships seem to be getting better in some ways. We're able to strengthen those bonds. So it's a tough time for a lot of people, but there are some silver linings in all of this. So I'm glad to hear that you're finding ways to keep yourselves grounded here. I want to, speaking of people and those around us, as you're communicating with voters and as you're talking to people in your community, what are you seeing that need the needs in Texas communities right now? How are you connecting folks with resources, and what are some of the core issues you're hearing people talk about in your communities? Because I'm sure even before COVID hit, there were still some major issues out there that may even be aligning with what we're seeing the needs are right now.
For me, the most highlight that was an issue obviously before COVID, but has been even exacerbated after COVID is the need for accessible healthcare. I was on the phone the other night with a retiree who is on a fixed income, but is also having to take care of her great grandchild. And, having a fixed income, and both her husband also has a fixed income as he is retired as well. And, they've got Medicare because of their age, but they don't for the great grandchild. And because of some things with the mother, they're not able to get her on Medicaid as it is right now. So there's no health care. There's no preventative health care. There's, what if something happens? And so she stresses about that. This is a story I'm hearing over and over and over again. My district has a median income of $50,000. That's 50, with an average household occupancy of 4. So they're in that coverage gap where, they can't get on Medicaid because they're not destitute enough. And then they can't afford regular insurance because it's too expensive, or if they can, it's still a high deductible plan, so they still can't pay up front, so they're not able to have access to preventative care. And that is what is the main issue in my district. That's something that my opponent, who has been in office for 12 years, refuses to vote for. All of a sudden this week, she comes out in a Dallas Morning News paper and has adopted my position, says absolutely she's for expanding Medicaid, and as long as there's no strings. Those strings are that we have to pay into the system. What she fails to tell everybody is that for every dollar that Texas spends, we get $9 back from the federal government. I'd be willing to pay $5 billion if I'm getting, $19 billion back. That's a good investment. And not only is it a good investment, it's the right thing to do for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and her flip-flop on Medicaid expansion did not go unnoticed. And it really kind of begs the question, can we trust a candidate who has said one thing for so long and now out of political convenience says another thing? Is she really going to go back to the Capitol, and is her caucus going to let her flip? Well, let's not give her the chance to prove it. Lorenzo, I know that it's an important issue in your district as well. And your opponent is equally notorious. I won't give him the benefit of name recognition. If you want to, that's up to you. But healthcare, also another important issue in your district.
Yeah, and exactly what Brandy was saying. Right now in the pandemic, we were talking about it before the pandemic, and it only just became more important and more obvious to us that this was something that needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed by bold leaders, hopefully on both sides of the aisle, to get it done. Not only do we get, is it the moral and economic right thing to do, but we also aren't even talking about every single dollar that we put into the Texas economy as far as Medicaid expansion will actually bring us a return on our investment with continued growth in our economy, especially in the healthcare section. So it's a no-brainer for us to be doing this. That money belongs to Texans, and it belongs to the Texans that need it the most. And that's why we're currently the most uninsured state in our country. We can change that if we elect leaders that are going to go out there and make sure that we build a system that will be able to receive that money and spend it in the right manner to make sure we're taking care of people and not bankrupting our system. But yeah, right now, because of COVID, there is so much uncertainty. Education is a very, very big issue for people here right now. We're very education focused here in Collin County. That's something we pride in ourselves in, is our public school system. And we want to make sure we're taking care of our teachers. A lot of our families are feeling that insecurity of not knowing what the future holds financially for them and for their children. And I think it's causing a lot of problems. And unfortunately, our leadership hasn't provided any sort of solutions or paths to make people, or even try to comfort people. But we see this continuation of these representatives going to Austin and doing whatever their special interests or their donors are asking them to do. And then the second that they get challenged at the ballot box, they try to play a more moderate role. But that's not the way that they're legislating when they get there. So yeah. I completely sympathize with Brandy when she talks about her opponent then going back and now being a champion for Medicaid expansion, when we know that is not the case, and we can't trust them behind closed doors.
Right. All right. I want to lighten this up a bit. Politics is a very serious business, but Brandy, you mentioned something early on that really caught my attention. You said that people believe this year. And yes. Lorenzo, I see that union sign behind you. Want power, join a union. My dad is in a union. My fiance is in a union. There's a lot of empowerment there too. And I want to ask you about some of the things that people are seeing that's really empowering them this year. And as you're thinking of that, I want to go back to something I mentioned earlier, which is the voter growth that we've seen in Texas. People have such a hard time believing that Texas could flip. But what they don't realize is that the voter growth for progressives in this state has been astronomical, not just in the last 2 years, but in the last 16 years, going back to 2004. Republicans, anybody can look this up. George W. Bush, when he ran for re-election in 2004, got about as many votes as Donald Trump did in Texas in 2016. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
more than a decade's worth of votes. And keep in mind, we're the fastest growing state in America, and they're getting the same votes they were getting then. This is why they're always trying to slow us down. Meanwhile, Democrats have picked up 1.5 million votes. Many of those are in Collin County, and a lot of those are in Dallas as well. So I find that very empowering and very encouraging. I'm curious what you're seeing on the ground out there.
We're definitely, seeing a lot of active engagement and a lot of efforts to make sure that people are registered to vote. So we've got the people that are going, yes, we're going to get out there, we're going to register to vote. We have so much more organization on the ground, not only in Dallas and Collin County, but all over the state of Texas, that I think people are starting to realize, hey, if we show up, we can actually affect change. And the thing that I have seen most, especially from 2017, 2018 to now, is that what I call the laissez-faire Democrats, the Democrats that show up to vote just sometimes, maybe presidential, sometimes not, they stick to their beliefs. But after having lived in Texas for so long, I think Democrats just gave up here because we were just getting beaten at the polls. And so it was like, why should I go out of my way? Because I know my vote doesn't count, because the red's always going to win. The red is always going to win. That's the way they gerrymandered it. That's the way they've done everything. And so why show up? But thank you to Beto for getting out there and fighting and showing people that if they just show up, maybe we won't get beaten down. And that's something I had to show my district as well. The reason I ran is because no one had challenged my opponent. No Democrat had really challenged my opponent in the 10 years that she was there. And no one challenged her for 2010, 12, 14. In 2016, the Dallas Democratic Party asked a 75-year-old white man to run just to have a name on the ballot. He earned $6,000 and got 43% of the vote. So if you give people an option and let them know that that option may have a chance, they will show up. And that's what's happening now. You see, I got 49% of the vote because people had an option. We said, hey, now look, in 2020, we only need 1,100 more people in a population of 80,000 for this district that's registered. We can do this.
Yeah,
but you have to get up off the couch and participate.
You got her running scared, and you got the momentum. You got the wind at your back. It's looking great. How about you, Lorenzo? What do you find empowering out there? What are you seeing?
Like I told you before, just actually going to a primary and being a Democrat and seeing a ballot full of candidates, I think it's very inspiring to people. But people are kind of see this like our last shot, like our final opportunity in this decade to change the direction that our politics has been going in our country, really. But actually being able to do it in our backyard is what's really inspiring people to focus and pay attention to this election. You just see so many people that have just not been politically active before, excited about going to cast their ballot. I know when we're calling people, that was one of our main focus, was to build a volunteer organization that was going to inspire people to make sure that they're coming out and voting. And we were successful in doing that. We built the largest grassroots volunteer team in the history of our county, knocked on more doors than any other Democrat has before us, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And that was what we thought we were going to need, and it's continuing. Now they're like, Lorenzo, I'll get messages on my phone saying, I've spoken to 3 of your volunteers in the last month. I promise you I'm going to go vote. But that's what we need. And the way we're doing it in such a micro level, since we do have that volunteer power and that enthusiasm, is really connecting with voters. They know that I am someone from this community. I'm a small business owner, and I want to just go and do a good job for my community and help find solutions that we so desperately need here.
Yeah. Well, it's so nice to have that encouragement and to see people involved and to see them mobilized and really believing in their power of their vote this year. I like to say that the power of the Texas voter has never been stronger than it is in 2020. And both of you are a testament to that. So really glad to see things going so well. I want to bring it back to some political stuff here. And let me ask you, by the way, I know it's a happy hour, but we like to drink coffee during our happy hour.
Alkaline water.
What is Governor Abbott's problem? Does he want to just be like mayor everywhere? Like, really kind of just running all of these local measures without going to the legislature or without kind of deferring to the locals. He defers to them when it's convenient. But I talked to somebody at the Capitol the other day. They referred to him as a monarch governor. We like to call him Governor COVID here at Progress Texas. But I'm curious how his oversight, or more specifically, his lack of oversight, has really impacted your communities out there. Like, I mean, there has to be definitely here. There's been some confusion and some mixed messages. Seeing the same thing out there?
Yeah, here in Collin County, there's definitely been mixed messages from our county-wide level to our individual cities. We see that most of the population wants, a mask mandate, but we see that it's still being held up by some of these individuals, even at our local level. But I like how you referred to the governor as Governor COVID. I think what people really want to see right now is leadership. And that is one thing that we have not seen from our state, unfortunately. Rather, I guess, choose to play the political game and political posturing over actually doing what's right for our community and keeping them safe, and also not providing any sort of solutions really as to what our plans are for the future. What happens if COVID starts to become more deadly in the fall? There's just no preparation, and there is really no, I guess their base isn't pushing them to really respond in any way, but it's causing a lot of uncertainty, and that's something that we need to do and address as soon as we get to the State House with Brandy, is finding solutions and letting people know that we are looking at every single situation, whether it gets better or worse. We should have a plan.
Yeah, I think Governor Abbott's problem is he follows in Trump's footsteps, wanting a very authoritarian way of governing, which completely flies in the face of democracy and representative government. What I'm hearing on the ground and what I'm seeing is, early on, there was a lot of issues. Not only did we have one message coming out of the White House, we had another message coming out of, the governor's mansion. Then we had another message coming out of our county judge, and then another message coming out of my city municipality. So it was chaos and basically pick or choose what you wanted to do. We have, I think, especially in Garland, have kind of settled in, and we're all kind of following Judge Jenkins on it, and following the fact that finally Greg Abbott chose to implement the mask mandate, and everyone's abiding by that. There's been a little bit of a small amount of faction that rebuff it and think that that's an infringement on people's rights to be told that they have to wear a mask, although they're told that they have to wear pants and shoes and shirts. So I don't know why we're stuck. The mask is the issue. But for the most part, everyone's following in line, doing the mask thing, doing what they're supposed to do, and understanding that it does have a, good impact. And we're seeing the decline in rates of hospitalization. We're seeing the decline in contact rates, and we're still able to go on and kind of do our business. So, I don't know what's going on with Governor Abbott. I don't know how long he's going to follow the Trump train. To me, that seems like that's going to end very poorly for him. But, hey, he's his own man.
To each his own. And fortunately, he came around to a mask order, which, when we see how much more effective the masks have been at this point, imagine if he would have come around to the mask order to begin with.
Exactly.
A lot of people would be better off, and a lot of the businesses that have been hurt so badly by this might have been able to find some sort of sustainability early on. We have a few more minutes here. I do want to ask you about your lives beyond this. I know I asked you about what's keeping you grounded and what's keeping you centered. A lot of people have been marathoning things during all this. I know that the Tiger King was really big early on. Paige and I have just gotten into The Last Dance, which is the Michael Jordan Bulls series on Netflix. I'm curious if there's anything that you're able to do to unwind at night that you're also seeing that you're able to kind of gives you a human connection with some of your voters. Do you even have time for anything like that?
For me, I'm a huge binger to begin with. I'm really big into movies and TV, and because that's my escape, that's my self-care. So at night, after everything dies down, I'll sit there and binge something. So since the lockdown happened, I went in head first into a full binge of Schitt's Creek on Netflix. And that was the best decision I've ever made in my life. Because that was right in the middle of March and the beginning of April, when everything was looking dire and grim and lives were changing and we couldn't go anywhere, and because people, might breathe on you and you die, and, just all of this darkness. And then I put it on Schitt's Creek and I laughed and I felt light and I was so happy. And I have just been grown so addicted to that. But my most recent binge has been Cobra Kai on Netflix.
Oh, I've heard it's good.
Oh, there's some cheese to it. I mean, it's true to its original form, but it's really good. And, I'm an 80s girl. I'm all deep in the 80s culture. And so to kind of be able to live with those characters into life these days, I love it. I mean, I just totally love it.
How about you, Lorenzo?
I am right there with Brandy on the Schitt's Creek train. I started watching that as soon as the pandemic took place, and I've probably seen it now 3 times in combined total, with bits and pieces here and there. I just love it. It definitely is a good escape. Also really helped my vocabulary with of very big words. I really enjoy that show. Recently, I'm not going to say the streaming service, but it ends October 1st. So I've been watching Parks and Rec because they're taking it away from the streaming service that I have. But I've been definitely locked in there and reminiscing over how good that show was and how much I enjoy it. I think all of us have a little bit of Leslie Knope in us.
I'll tell you, in all my years in politics, there are, of all the political entertainment you see out there, TV shows and movies, there's actually very few that are close to the real thing. There's an old Eddie Murphy movie called The Distinguished Gentleman, which kind of nails it. But the more recent ones, I would say Parks and Rec and Veep, are a lot closer to what it's really like inside of these government institutions than what it's not like. So,
I've been also redoing West Wing, and because that's my let's get remotivated. Let's put wind in my sails and rebuff my soul that there is a reality at some point somewhere that there was humanity and compassion in our government. And what I've really noticed, there's 2 things that going back over a 20-year, because it's been 20 years since it's been on, is that there are so many things that we're still fighting on and still trying to address. Like last night, I watched a deal where he was getting ready to roll out, Judge Bartlett was getting ready to roll out his new energy plan. And everything that he talked about on being on his plan on a fake show 20 years ago are still things we're trying to implement now. Yeah. So it's for being 20 years old, it's still very relevant, in a shocking way. But it's another piece of joy and lifting of the soul for me.
Well, it's 20 years old, and similarly, we're just a little more than 20 days out from the first day of early vote. Oh my God, it's almost here, 25 days to be exact. As we look to wrap this up, I want to end it on a high note and talk about some of the things that you're really passionate about and that's fueling you over the next 20 days to early vote. And I guess it's going to be about 6 weeks until election day. But and then what I'd like you to do is also mention your website in your remarks so that we can help get you a little traffic there as well.
Sure. So what I'm really passionate about is making sure we expand Medicaid. I talk about this all the time, the importance of it, of how it will only benefit the state of Texas, especially my district, and that it's a win-win. It's the right thing to do, and it's financially feasible for us, especially when we're going to go into a session at a financial deficit. So that's the number one thing. Number two thing is also making sure we reconfigure and shore up public school finance. And by doing those two things, we're able to actually help reduce our property taxes. Then the next thing that I'm really passionate about and look forward to passing in the House is paid sick leave for the state. Again, the pandemic has completely and totally shined a large light on the need for being able to have people maintain economic stability and stay home when they're sick. It's just something that's absolutely needed. So you can find out more about me and my issues and my stances and everything I believe on brandykchambers.com. It's BRANDY, K as in kite, chambers.com. I really appreciate it. And on any and all social media, it's at Brandy4Texas, FOR, not the number. And again, it's Brandy with a Y. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time, Ed. It's really great to catch up with you.
And thanks for joining us. Very nice to chat with you again, too. And Lorenzo, bring it home for us.
I'm very passionate about similar things to Brandy. I want to make sure that we expand healthcare to the people that need it the most here in our state. I want to make sure that we support our public school system, make sure we're paying teachers right, make sure we're reducing classroom sizes, and also taking care of our retired teachers. I also want to make sure that we pass an economic recovery package here in Texas that will grow our economy and hopefully provide those jobs that we're going to need so desperately to rebound from this pandemic. And lastly, I believe our communities just want to be safe. So I want to keep talking about gun sense reform and making sure that we're passing these things that a majority of Texans agree with, that will keep our communities safe and still respect people's Second Amendment right to bear arms.
Yeah. Well, lots of issues, and we could talk about so many. There's even
Lorenzo
a bunch
for
of
Texas, sorry.
Oh, no, yeah, that's right. Lorenzo for Texas, FOR Texas.com.
Yes, we have a phone bank on Wednesday with Beto O'Rourke. We'd love to have you. You can sign up on social media, or you can also, we have a fundraiser happening this Saturday. We'd love to have you as well with Latino Victory Fund and LGBTQ Victory Fund.
Excellent.
Oh, and on the Medicaid issue, I'm having a fundraiser on Thursday featuring special guest, former Senator Al Franken, to talk about what a state looks like when they have expanded Medicaid.
Imagine that. And I'm glad you had to mention that as well. It's Brandy Chambers running in Dallas. That is, remind us the House district number?
112.
112, which I see is also in your Chiron there. That's Brandy K Chambers, Brandy with a Y, brandykchambers.com. Lorenzo for Texas, FOR Texas.com, running up in
House District 67 in Collin County.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us. It was our pleasure to host you, and wishing you the best of luck. We'll be rooting for you all the way, and see a lot more of you soon.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
Thank
Bye,
you, Ed.
Lorenzo.
Bye, Brandy.